Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Faustin Lammler and I work for the MariaDB Foundation. In this video I will show you how to use Ansible to manage your MariaDB deployments. So first we will see Ansible, what it is, a brief presentation. Then I will show you my platform and we'll set up an Ansible minimal environment. After we will install and I will show you the role, the MariaDB role that I have developed for this presentation. And we will use it to deploy our first MariaDB instance on the first node. We'll do some configuration changes on the node using this role. We'll configure the node as a master and create a second node, and we'll configure it as a replica. We'll finally add a backup on the second node. And at the end, we'll destroy everything and redeploy the full configuration of these two nodes. And then we'll conclude. So first, what is Ansible? As the Wikipedia page says, Ansible is an open source software provisioning, configuration management, and application deployment tool. There are lots of other open source alternatives like SaltStack, Puppet, or Chef. What makes Ansible a bit different, and maybe the reason of its success, is that it's agentless. So basically you only need an SSH access to a machine and you can already start using it. And this was from the beginning a design of Ansible. Well, it's not completely true because Ansible is written in Python, so you also need Python installed on the remote machines. That should already be the case on most Linux distributions, but if not, it's not difficult to install it. So about the environment, I am using Virtual Machine Manager and I have 2 VMs, Debian 10 VMs, and a bunch of snapshots to be able to roll back and redeploy. You can of course use VirtualBox or other alternatives. So let's install Ansible. To install it, we are really going to use Python and the virtual environment, but you can also install it through your package manager. So let's create the Python environment. Let's activate it. Okay, now we should be able to use pipe to install Ansible. And I have to install wheel too because pipe is complaining if not. We're gonna install the last version of Ansible, the last stable version, and it's the 299. Let's check that Ansible is installed. Perfect. So now we have to describe our machine environment. So to do this, we need an inventory file that's called hosts, and there I'm describing the group, the DB group, and the two nodes that are in this group. These are the nodes that we are going to target with Ansible. We also use some global variables. I am forcing the Python 3 interpreter, and we are going to use the root user to connect to our machines. Then we need to set up the Ansible configuration. So we're going to use the GitHub versions from the stable, the same versions that I'm using. And you have lots of options there, but we only need to explain to Ansible what is our host inventory file. So it's in the same path and it's the only thing that we're going to touch. So now let's check that we are able to connect to our machines through Ansible. For this I'm going to use the module ping and I'm going to target all my machines. So then I see that I am able to connect to these machines. I could also use the group DB to target only those two machines, or also just one of the machines. Perfect. And you can also use like basic command like date So, Ansible is installed. Let's install now the MariaDB role. So the role that I've created is available on GitHub, and you can also get this role through the Ansible Galaxy platform. Ansible Galaxy platform is just a wrapper to GitHub. This is a way of referencing your roles if you want to share them publicly. So there are two ways to install this role. First is using Ansible Galaxy command. So you use the Ansible Galaxy install and the name of the role. This is just going to fetch the role and install it in your home directory. The other way of installing it is through a git clone basic command. So we are going to create on this directory a role subdirectory. So, and then we are going to clone the role. So let's take a look at what the role contains. There are lots of files and directory, and there are, I'm not going to explain every file, but the documentation of a role, when you find a role, documentation can normally be found in the default main YAML file. So this default is a good practice to document your role in this file, and this is basically all the options that your role can use. This YAML file is documented here in the README markdown file of my role, but basically there are the same variables, and there you have the explanation of every variable. Then another directory that is important to take a look at is the task directory. This is basically where you're going to file your playbooks, the playbooks that you are going to apply to your machines. And again, the main is the file you want to look at first. And this main playbook is just a script that is a YAML file that is going to call subtasks. So let's take a look at the setup tasks. This task is pretty easy to read. So first what it does is it's install the MariaDB repository package that is needed when you install the MariaDB through the MariaDB Foundation repository. This is an optional task, and I will show you how to use it. And then it installs the MariaDB package, MariaDB server, sorry, and also it will install some Python libraries so that Ansible can work with MariaDB and use the Python driver to do some task with MariaDB on MariaDB. If we look at the other directory, you have a template directory, and this is where you want to put your configuration, the MariaDB configuration file, and then maybe also a file directory. There you will put your file that you want to copy to your machines. So now let's deploy our role to the first node. We need to create a general playbook, so we can apply the role to the DB group. So node 1 is included in the DB group, so it's going to be targeted by this role. And then we call the role. This first way of calling it is through the subdirectory roles that we have created through the git clone. And this one is by invoking the role from Galaxy. And the command that you wanna use is Ansible playbook. With those options, the -L is to limit the Ansible to the node 1, the site YAML is the file that you have just created, and the -D option is to show the difference when Ansible is going to apply all the tasks. There is also the -C option that was going to check and not do anything. So this is really good when you are not sure about what is going to happen on your machines. So this is quite long, and I have recorded an asciinema play that I play at forced speed. So we are not waiting on the installation. well done. So it installed all these packages, it deploys this configuration file, and then it restores the MariaDB server. So now the node one is with MariaDB server, default configuration. We didn't configure anything, and he installed the MariaDB server package that comes with Debian. So now let's apply some specific configuration for the node one. This is done by creating a directory host vars and creating a YAML file, and you should name it as your host. Oops. We're going to deploy the MariaDB official package from the MariaDB Foundation repository, and so we set up this variable to true, and then we specify the URL and also the version. Again, I have recorded an asciinema play, so we are not waiting for all this installation. And you will see I'm speeding up a bit, and also we'll compare to installation node 1 and node 2. So this is how you install on more than one host, limiting by the name of the hosts. So as you can see, the node 2 was keeping the task MariaDB install repository. Alright. And now we can check that on the first node you have the 10.4 MariaDB version, and on the second node this is still the default MariaDB version that comes with Debian. Now take a look how we can modify some configuration on the node 1. So I have added two options. The first one is that we now are going to bind, so to make the MariaDB server listen on all its IP instead of the local host. And also we are going to change the inodb buffer pool size. And this is a way for me to show you the check mode. So we are not going to do anything here, but Ansible is going to show us what would it apply in case we didn't use the check mode. So as you can see, the node 2 was untouched at the end, no changes. But on the node 1, the Ansible is going to change this option, the bind address option, and add the inodb buffer pool size. Let's do it. Perfect. Okay, finally I'm going to show you how to deploy a master replica cluster. So we are going to change our first node to a master, and the second node is going to be the replica. So first of all, let's create a group YAML files to mutualize, to put in common all the options that are common to these two nodes. So as you can see, we use the official MariaDB repository and the same URL and the 10.4 version. Same goes for the inodb buffer pool size. And this is how you set up the replication user. The replication user is used by both nodes, so this is the place where you have to put it if you don't want to repeat this paragraph on the two nodes. Then on the first node, I have added some stuff. So first, I'm going to create some databases, and we're with some different char sets. Database 1 and database 2 are going to be replicated. The database 3 not. And then we are going to create also two users, user 1 and user 2. The user 1 is going to get usage grants to all the databases from the server, and it's going to be an all access, all privileges to the database 1. These grants are exactly the same as will use with the grant SQL syntax. And finally, we will create all these options for the replication. So the role is master, the server ID is really important, they should be different, and then some other options about replication. Remember that you can also remove users or remove databases using absent here. Regarding the replica, so the node 2, it is really simple. You just have to add the replication role, the server ID, and of course the IP of the master. So let's try to deploy all this. So I'm starting from 2 nodes that have already MariaDB 10.4 installed. Alright, so now you can see the deployment was pretty fast. And we are going to check on the second node if replication is working. And as you can see, the replication is started and the replica is waiting for master events. If we show the databases, remember they were created only on the master and they were replicated on the second node. Let's maybe drop the first database to check that replication is working. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Now the database 1 is also dropped on the second node. Okay, finally, the role is also able to configure some backups. So let's show how to do this. On the node, on the secondary node, you just have to add those variables to set up the backup. So it's going to deploy a script and the cron tab. So just activate it by setting the MariaDB backup DB to true. Then also creating the cron and the cron minutes, and the cron hours variables, the backup directory, and also the number of days you want to keep the backup. And finally, you have to also define the database you want to backup. Well, that's it. Some documentation about Ansible. I recommend you this book from Jeff Girling. It's really good. This guy is producing very good information about Ansible and tutorials also, and lots of roles. So I encourage you to take a look at it. I wanted to talk to you about also of the Methogen for Ansible. It's a project that's trying to tackle the slowness of the SSH connection that is sometimes problematic with Ansible. And finally, please, if you want to report something on the role, do some pull requests or fork it or modify it, please do it. I'm really happy to share it with you. I was forgetting that I promised you to destroy everything and to reinstall and redeploy everything, so we have not time to do it now, but I'm gonna share you in the description of the video an asciinema session with all the deployment from scratch. So bye.